All right, let me know if you guys are having trouble hearing me at all. And I'm just going to share my screen here. So this is our GitHub page. I'm just going to do the intro here, show you what I did, and then pass it up to Jonathan. So my main role in the project was setting it up, getting everything organized so that we could come up with an idea that we all liked, and then doing a lot of the design. So I'm just going to walk you through how I did some of that stuff. Just an overview. We used the GitHub Kanban board, and we basically took one of these rows and just wrote down like what we were currently obsessed with in our lives, and we used these obsessions to come up with ideas for the project. And we also did a row where we introduced one another to each other, so we could go in there and see what our skills are. We then kind of did a thing where we met maybe like 2 or 3 times and hashed out ideas, and we ended up on a budgeting idea. So this final row that we have in here is all of the features that we decided that we wanted to potentially add to this project. And the ones that we put check marks next to here are the ones that we decided to take care of first. And then in addition to this board, we also made boards for our front end tasks, and then also our back end tasks. So this is how we kept everything organized through most of the project. When we got towards the end, we were just kind of winging it because we didn't really have as much stuff going on. So we were just able to keep it all up in our heads. And then the final thing I'm going to show here is the design. We used Figma for all of the design. We started with some really basic screens where we just wanted to get the elements on the page so that when we actually did go and design this, we didn't miss anything. I know that can be a huge pain if you see down the road that you missed something that was very important. Trying to wedge it into the project later in the game can be kind of stressful and kind of take you off the rails. So because we started it in Figma like this and very basic, we were able to get all the elements that we needed on the page, get a good idea of what we kind of want it to look like. And Ben kind of took this and made it look much better. So we didn't have like a lot of restrictions when it came to the design and how it actually looked. We kind of used this more for just making sure that we didn't miss anything. And the final thing that I want to show here is, let's see. I'm just going to click on the README. We made a pretty robust README here. And this is something that I actually found on Free Code Camp. Somebody had posted a project that had a really robust README like this, and I used that as a template. I'll throw this into the chat when I pass it off to Jonathan so that you guys can go in here and check out everything that we put in here about the project. There's also a link in there to see the demo. If you want to do any development personally, you can launch it yourself. And I think from here, I'm just going to pass it off to Jonathan. So take it away.
Sweet. Thanks, Brett. Yeah, Brett ended up getting a job, I think like the second week after we started. So he got pretty busy with that. But I told him a lot of times, like if it wasn't for how he set the project up at the beginning, it would have been a lot harder to maintain things for the rest of the time. And those of you who have experience with that, I'm sure you understand how important it is just to set it up correctly. So setting up the project, like setting all us up on having our roles, and then the design part, like, because if I had to design it, it would look like just a pile of garbage. So I'm very glad that that we had him on our team. he didn't mention, but he has like 12 years of experience as a designer before he switched to being a developer. So like as soon as I heard that, I was just like, this is going to be beautiful. So anyway, Brett was super very helpful on our team and took on a lot of challenges. So all right, so I am, for those of y'all who don't know me, I'm primarily a front end developer. So this was like my first. Oh wait, can y'all see my screen? My blank VS Code. Cool. All right, man. What do I do with this Zoom window? I don't even know. I mean, okay. Anyway, so this is my first like big foray into a back end, and I chose to do Nest. I've done a little bit with Nest before, but this is obviously way more elaborate than the last project that I did like by myself. Um, so anyway, we kind of did it out of order, but I actually started with our like transactions part, and of course this is for our a budget app. So you can kind of see how it's structured here, where we have these endpoints like post requests, get requests, patch, delete, and we use MongoDB, which is not relational. So I'm having to use all these IDs to target specific things, which I don't really care for at this point. But you know, when we started, I think actually somebody who dropped from the project was like, we should do MongoDB. And then everybody was like, okay, sure. And then they left. So then I was like, okay, we're still doing MongoDB. Anyway, if you love MongoDB, I'm sorry. But I'm just saying. Anyway, so that's where we're at with that. This is the transactions. There's some other stuff in here, but I'm going to go back to auth for a second. So what I ended up doing with auth is, let's see, we just have, you know, two methods, sign up and log in. Those are the two endpoints. And then over here in the services, we have your create a user and the login. Pretty simple stuff, right? Using bcrypt, generating a salt, hashing the password, and then storing it. You know, throwing exceptions on the login, comparing the password, making sure it's right, and then passing back an access token. I remember doing a lot reading this, and it was saying that it was yes. It was saying that it was whenever you just send it, like do it this way, sending back an access token, that you're susceptible to XSS attacks. It's hard to say. Anyway, so I think if given more time, I would probably send it back in a cookie or something, like an HTTP cookie, so that wouldn't happen. But this worked for us. So anyway, after you get authorized, and you'll see this whenever Ben presents his part, we have our budgets. So the way that we kind of rendered this out was we do this get all budgets. And this is kind of cool. I based some of this off of the EveryDollar app, which I don't know if any of y'all use, but there's some stuff I like from that budgeting app that I wanted to implement. And so this get all budgets sends an array of active created budgets and budgets that have not been created yet. So that's why we have this budget dummy data like array right here. And so I'm splicing this array together to send back an array of like mixed up, right, of active like created budgets and dummy budgets. So anyway, so I send that back, and then after that we have all the other stuff. So like you can actually create a budget here, and then you can get your budget by ID, edit a budget, all that stuff. Within these budgets, there are categories. And so that's where this comes in. So each budget, and again, you'll see this in a little bit, each budget has like the default categories, which again, if we had more time, we would probably add like some CRUD capability to that, where you could change your categories and change the names and all that stuff. But for now, we don't have that. So we just have the default categories. And then within each category, then that's where you go to the transaction piece of this, where you can add like transactions to each category, which affects the budget. So I have a little bit of weird logic happening back here, where I have like the transactions are happening in their own like piece in the database, but then they're also altering the budget data that's coming back and like being added to it. So anyway, so that way you actually have access to them from like a couple of places. We have our utils right here, which is just like, oh yeah, thanks, Rob. I just, I want people to know why it's not working if it's not working. Anyway, And then I think the last thing was this finance tips thing. And this is really simple. It's just an array of like financial tips that we found. And we have a loading screen. So we're kind of hacking the loading screen by like loading in these finance tips whenever you log in or before you log in, and then the loading screen happens and this shows. And honestly, I'm just going to tell you, we don't really need a loading screen. There's not so much data that we need to load. We just wanted to put it in because it's fancy. So anyway, there's a little 5-second timer that Ben added for that. But anyway, now that you're probably really bored of the back end, Nest is fun. It has TypeScript. And actually, there was one more thing I wanted to say, and I won't show anything for this, but I ended up doing all the hosting for this. So I got the back end hosted on Google Cloud Platform and the front end. I highly recommend it. It's actually a pretty smooth process. Like after you've done it once, you're like, oh, okay, this is not bad. And then we're using Mongo Atlas to float around the cloud. So yeah, I think that's my part. I'm gonna pass it over to Ben.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. And before I get into my part, I just wanted to give a shout out to Brett. Like Jonathan said, he started a new job, and even despite all that, like he still like kept up with us every morning. He would check in with us, making sure we had something to do. And like without him and his designs, like Jonathan said, this would probably look like hot garbage, but thanks to him, it looks good. And also shout out to Jonathan. He's been kind of like a mentor to me. This is the biggest project that I've ever done. A lot of my projects I can do like within 2-3 hours or so, but this is something that has taught me how to do Git, as well as just a whole bunch of things that I've researched through this project. It was a great experience. So I'm just going to go through the front end technologies real quick. I made a very, very short PowerPoint. I don't know if you guys can see this. Can y'all see this okay? Just says front end technologies. Okay. Yeah. So I'm just going to go through the tech that we used. The obvious one is React library. We used it with TypeScript. Everyone on the team, with the exception of Jonathan, none of us have really touched TypeScript before. And so we were really interested in learning it just because we've heard so much about it. We've seen it on so many job postings. And so I thought that this would be a great time, especially with having someone like Jonathan on our team to fall back on, because we really trust Jonathan like that. And so this was a great learning experience. Even though TypeScript yelled at me a lot, I would still keep going back to it just because I feel like it saved me so much trouble, probably for the long run. As for styling, we use plain CSS. So everything that you see on our web app is going to be pretty much just custom CSS, but we structured this with styled components. And the advantage of that is we were able to pass the props as attributes and then just do dynamic styling. So we could use the same component, but we could conditionally format it in a different way if we wanted to. And then we have various forms throughout the web app. So we have login, sign up, transaction adder, editor. And so we couple this with the Yup validator, where we we created a schema where we could check the user's input against it and make sure that they're not being naughty intentionally or accidentally trying to break our app by inputting something that they shouldn't be. And we also use the React number format package for the currency input fields. This being a budget app, Jonathan really wanted to make sure we could, the user could see the UI, like whenever they would type in an amount, that it wouldn't just be showing, like, for example, 3,000. It would have 1,000 separator with a comma and a prefix with a $sign. Sounds very simple in theory, but it was very tricky for us, and it was actually one of our biggest issues, which I'll talk about later. React router for routing. We use nested routes for the budgets and the transactions. And then for data fetching and making the API calls to Jonathan's backend routes, I used Axios. And then to fetch the data, I used React Query. along with that. And then we have some subtle animation throughout the web app. You might notice we use Framer Motion for that. And then the icons was through React icons. And Material UI, I only used it for the loading spinner just because I didn't know how to create a loading spinner on my own. So I decided I would kind of cheat there. So going on to some of the challenges we faced. The first one is the currency formatting and input field. I just talked about. I won't go into too much detail of why it was so difficult for us, because honestly, it was just one of those things where we fixed something and then something else would break, and then we'd fix that and something else would break. But we ended up figuring it out because previously we were trying to implement a React currency input field package, but that didn't really have much community around it. And so we couldn't really figure out how to get that to work with React hook forms. And so we ended up doing more research and found the React number format package, which did have a lot more community. And I was able to couple that with the controller component in React hook forms to get that to work the way we wanted it to. Number two, this was more something that I've struggled with state management and prop drilling, just because I was so used to doing like smaller projects that are like not very big. Like it would be 2-3 nested components. So prop drilling was never really an issue, but with something like this, it started to get overwhelming if we wanted to introduce a new feature or if we wanted to change something within a feature that we already have. And so I thought that for the future, I would like to implement and learn more and implement some sort of like global state management, like Redux toolkit, or one that I researched was Justand. And then number three, another challenge was TypeScript, obviously constantly yelling at me because I did something wrong. And then I will admit there were a couple of times when I tried to use the type of any just to make it stop yelling at me, but then Jonathan would start yelling at me. So actually Jonathan didn't yell at me. So now I flew by that just so I could walk through the app with you guys. I don't know. Can you guys see the app right here? Or is it still on the...
No, we can see it. Hey,
okay.
Brett, do you still have that link handy just in case anybody wants to demo it? It is hosted. So if you want to go in there, can you throw it back in the chat?
Jonathan, he's on the live version.
Oh, sweet.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the live version. If you guys want to visit it, you can. Just don't go too crazy with it because I think Jonathan may have to pay for it if it goes over, limit. So this is the welcome page that the user will land on whenever they come to our website. Just a cute little seal with our logo and then our slogan, and then 2 options for login and sign up. As a new user, of course, you would go to the sign up. Just to show that our validation actually works, I'm just going to hit register and it'll pop up with these error alerts showing you what you did wrong. So I'm just going to sign up a new account here. And I'll just say budgety@gmail.com. Okay. And once I hit register, this was what Jonathan was talking about. We have a loading modal that will come up. As soon as the user registers, we have it designed where it'll put them, basically route them straight into their dashboard / homepage. But you are going to see that loading page come up with the wise financial quotes that is being grabbed randomly from Jonathan's backend list of quotes. So I'll just hit register here. So this is so after 5 seconds, it'll put you into this homepage and it'll have a carousel of your budgets, and it'll have 2 years worth of budget cards already rendered out here. So you can navigate through the carousel using these arrow keys. And if you see here, it actually began here March 2022, which is the current month. And so you can go back up to 1 year and then go forward up to 1 year. And let's say you don't want to click this arrow 100 bajillion times. You can just click this, go to current month, and it'll take you straight back to the current month. And as you can tell, all these budget cards are in an inactive state. So it'll tell you to please create a new budget. So once you click this plus sign here, it'll bring up the modal. I will set a budget for the month. Let's say $1,000. Once I hit save, okay, well, sorry, that's we're working some issues out, but
It did that to me today too. I was like,
yeah. I think I need to use the use mutation with the React query. I didn't implement that, but so now this budget card is in an active state. So you'll see that the plus sign is gone, and now you can click into this. So when it was in an inactive state, if you click it, it doesn't really do anything. But now that it's in an active state, you can click into it. It'll bring you to the budget slash this particular budget ID. So anything that shows up on this page is going to be tied to this particular budget for March 2022. So now that we have this budget, you can add an expense, you can edit the budget, you can add an income. So let's just add an expense right here. And we'll type in, I don't know, Chipotle, $12. And we have a category here. And we'll click food, add the expense, and now it shows up here in your expenses. Let's add something else. Let's say free code camp subscription fee of $50. And we'll say that's lifestyle. Add expense. So that has also been added to your expenses list. So now if you go back to your budget, you'll see that the UI has been updated to show that you've spent $62 out of your $1,000 budget for the month, and now you have $938 left for the month. But let's say you want to, I don't know, you won the lottery, and let's say you now have $1,500 to spend for the month. You can go ahead and edit your budget for the month, save it, and it'll redo the math and, you know, re-render this budget card here. And if you want to go back to your expenses and let's say you want to edit this, or if you click on an item, it'll actually slide out some options container, and you'll have the ability to delete or edit. And so let's say we forgot that we actually got Chipotle with guac, and now instead of $12, it's $25 because guac would be expensive. And let's say you forgot that free code cam is actually free. You don't need a subscription fee. You can delete it. And so now you have one item here. And if we go back, you'll see that our budget card has been updated to $25. And I didn't mention this. This will spit out the categories that actually have transactions in it. So food, we still have the Chipotle with guac. If I were to add an income here, and you see this tiny note, it's a disclaimer saying income transactions will not affect the budget. And the reason for that is because we will probably add some feature that will incorporate the income. But if I were to add an income here and I come back to our main budget page, you'll see that the income category has been added, and it'll render out the paycheck with the $1,000. And all of this is, that's pretty much it for the features. All of this was designed mobile first. And so if you want to go to this live site using your phone, you can, and hopefully it looks okay. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the features. You can log out. And then Jonathan set up the JWT token so that your auth token is going to expire after an hour. We don't have an hour for me to show, so you can just trust me on that. But that's about it. So yeah.
nice. Thanks, Ben. Cool. Back over to you, Scott.